Good evening and welcome to Mental Health Matters After Hours with me, Dr Audrey Tang. This is the show where we take a deep dive into all things mental health and well-being. If you want workplace well-being, then tune in at 8 a.m. PT, because that's where we get all the guest experts who are thought leaders, who are at the top of their fields, who are there to talk about all those workplace issues. Now, in our evening show, we do a range of different things. We share lived experiences. We share expert-led discussion on topics such as depression, exploitation, menopause, all the things that are affecting our mental health. But we also do a couple of tutorials. And that's because my background is in psychology, but I'm a trainer. And in particular, I focus on practical tools. So, for example, somebody may come to me with a problem and there may well be a psychological solution to it. There is also often a practical solution to it as well. So, for example, if you want to improve your fitness routine, then yes, one thing could be, I need to motivate myself to go running. But a practical thing that will help you there is having the right running shoes, having your kit laid out for you, knowing the route you're going to run, having a light in case it's dark. All of those excuses that you might have, those can be solved with practicalities. And so today, I thought I would talk about presentation skills. I thought I would talk about public speaking, because there is a psychological reason why we hate it, but there is also many practical reasons why we can improve it. So George Jessel said that the human brain is a wonderful thing. It starts working the minute we're born and doesn't stop until we try and speak in public. And if any of you have been in that situation where you've got this really big speech or presentation and you've stood there and then your mouth's gone dry and then you start shaking and you don't know what to say, we've all experienced that. We've all experienced that. I've even experienced that. However, because I teach as a living, because I speak as a living, I practice my way out of it. And I'm going to give you some of those top tips today. Now, there is no excuse for not practicing. As much as you can have the psychological support, as much as you can be hypnotized to not feel anxiety, you can go to as many speech and drama sessions as you wish to learn the theory about what makes a good speech. If you do not go out and practice, you will still struggle. And the reason for that is speaking is a performance skill. With the best will in the world, just learning about it isn't going to make a difference. So when you practice, do try to practice somewhere where it feels like you're speaking to an audience, but the stakes are not all that high. That would be my first bit of advice. I'm going to take you through a number of things that we can do, and today's talk is broken down into 3 key areas. You and looking after yourself and your voice, how to prepare, and delivery of the speech itself. So let's start with you. Now, in drama, in acting, we would normally have a warm-up. And the warm-up is there to kind of get you out of the stresses and strains of the day and get you preparing to deliver your talk or perform your character. And a lot of the drama warm-ups start with warming up the body. What I'm going to do is just talk to you about some of the vocal warm-ups that you can do to warm up your mouth. Now that sounds silly, I know. But if you're watching this in winter, what you will find is you're coming from outdoors and your mouth will be frozen. And if you try and deliver a speech, I've been there. I lecture at 9 a.m. having walked outside from the car park into the classroom. I can't speak. So just give your mouth a bit of a massage. It's a nice, easy thing to do, and it feels lovely as well. And this is a little secret here. It's good for checking your stress levels, because if you start massaging your jaw and you realize that your jaw is quite stiff, you may well have been grinding your teeth. And that is a form or symptom of stress. So give yourself a bit of a warm-up. Another thing you can do is chew as if you're chewing on a toffee. So it's really, use your mouth a little. You're going to feel silly, but no one's watching you. Or if you think someone's going to watch you, go and do it in the toilets. Okay, so chewing. And another thing you might want to do, but people don't like this one, is stick your tongue out as far as it can go, sort of forward and here, high, and the other side. It all feels a little bit silly, but it's really, good for articulation. And articulation is the way we enunciate the words. Why is that so important? Well, in a large hall, if you articulate clearly, people can still understand you, even if your voice isn't very powerful. But if you don't articulate enough, if you don't really go into the shapes of those words and the consonants, then if your voice isn't strong, then people can lose you, especially at the back of the room. So it's really good for getting articulation and getting your mouth around certain words. It's also especially helpful if you speak a second language such as Italian. Italians speak really, really fast. And even speaking in English, even having to translate into English and then translate it back into Italian, they're still going to speak quickly. But articulation will really help you. So work on articulation. Second thing to think about is your voice is your instrument. And you can be as exciting or as boring as you want with your voice. And it's your instrument. You play it how you wish. But these are three things people don't often think about: pitch, pace, and pause. Pitch is how high or how low that you are using your voice. A great exercise for this is to hum. So you can do this now if you want. You can just hum on one note that's comfortable for you. So, is about comfortable for me. You try that. Go wherever you're comfortable. You don't need to harmonize with me. So just go where you're comfortable. Once you've got that, I want you to go higher. So if that was my was going more comfortable, so higher, and then go lower. Think about how those felt. If higher was comfortable or more comfortable than lower, then chances are when you get excited or when you change your pitch, you will naturally go higher. If lower was more comfortable for you, when you get excited or when you naturally change your pitch, you'll go lower. So what that means is you'll be talking, and if higher is more comfortable for you, as you get more excited, you're going to go higher and higher and higher, and that's great. That's natural. It's two pitches that you're using. It gives a bit of interest. However, if you're used to going upwards, give people something they're not expecting. Go lower. And that can change how people perceive you as well. This is best demonstrated when you use tone as part of this and volume. So if you were talking, and you naturally go higher, and just say you're trying to be very angry, and so you're getting angry, you've put an angry tone in your voice, and that's how it sounds, and it's all very much up there, and that's what people are used to hearing. Imagine if you take anger down, and you bring it down here, and then people are drawn in to have to listen to you. And this is something that most teachers know. It's something that most teachers do as well. We use the range of our voices. So if you're used to going up there, make a change, go low. If you're used to going lower and slower, try and excite it. Get excited, bring it all up, go higher and faster and louder even. As I said, volume, it comes in with pitch and pace. Volume is where you get louder or you get softer. Again, people seem to think projecting out really, really loudly is what's going to get everybody's attention. Yes, that is one way. If you're in a massive auditorium, that may well be the only way. But if you're in a classroom or you're in a smaller space, then you can bring your voice down. You don't need to change your tone or your pitch. But if you bring the volume down, people are now suddenly doing this. It's more intimate. It's quieter. So you can tell your stories that way. You can use your voice to manipulate, for want of a better word, your audience to do what you want them to do. And the other thing is when you've drawn them in, you can scare them with something big. And that's quite funny. Don't do that all the time. Pace, the speed at which you speak. I speak very fast. I have to really think about slowing my pace down. And actually, this can work in certain situations. In other situations, it might be more problematic, because if I'm working on deliberately slowing something down, it can feel a bit uncomfortable. And the minute you begin to feel uncomfortable, your brain doesn't actually know what is causing the discomfort. And it might just start thinking, oh, it's public speaking in general, not I'm trying something that doesn't feel natural to my normal tone of voice. So pace is something that you can work on, you can use to your advantage. However, be mindful that it can sometimes put you off if it's very unnatural to you. Pause. That's something people don't know how to use, partly because we're scared of it. Now, women are notoriously worse than men at this. Why? Because we hate silence. We absolutely hate silence. So if you are like me, and you can think of having a conversation with a husband or partner or brother or gentleman in your life, and they're saying something and you finish off their sentence, yeah, you probably don't use pause very much. And it's really powerful when you use it in speeches. The other thing that you're doing, just to close that thought, if you are always finishing that person's sentences, they never learn how to finish a sentence. So stop doing it. Let them finish the sentence. But using pause is very helpful, because what it does is it allows points to land. You can either use pause in the middle of a sentence and then continue so the audience is waiting in anticipation, or you can use pause at the end so the audience can think about what you've just said. But pause is not just about stopping. And I've seen this. I see this on stage when I direct, especially community theatre, because community theatre is amateurs. I don't expect them to be able to command the stage in the same way as a seasoned actor. But what you see is I'll say, put a pause in, and they'll be talking. Very ineffective. Where pause is important is when you carry the energy with it. So that would be, instead of the talk again, it's talk, carry on talking. But just there's a little bit of energy that is going with you. That's what the audience is carried on. So a pause is part of your speaking. It is not just something you put in for fun. The last couple of things I would want to say in the warm-up and using your voice as a tool is look after it. Now, I love my diet sodas. I particularly like one which is very, very bad for my voice, and it has caffeine in it. Coffee's another thing that has caffeine in it. It's not great for our voices. You don't necessarily need to be gargling with water and honey every day, but try and stay away from too much caffeine when you're going to be using your voice for a long time. And the last tip I'm going to give you before we go on to our second segment, which will be preparation, is the use of painkillers. Now, I completely understand. If you've been talking all day, if I've been delivering a session, I do a burlesque-a-thon. After I've been teaching for 5 hours, my voice hurts. My voice does not want to speak again. But then the next day, if I go and take painkillers for it, I will then start using my voice and not understanding when it's actually really hurting, and then you can do more damage to it. So, just to close this little first segment, pitch, pace, pause, volume is another one. That makes your instrument very interesting, and look after it. Not too much caffeine, and be aware of the painkillers. And we'll be back just after this. A world without the arts is one without confidence, creativity and community, and yet funding has been reduced every year. Arts programs have been shown to benefit social inclusion and well-being, particularly for marginalised groups, with projects fostering a sense of belonging, cultivating mutual understanding and breaking down social barriers and isolation. Participation in arts programs can help boost confidence and open doors to opportunities that may otherwise be inaccessible. Click Arts Foundation offers grants up to £2,000 for grassroots arts projects twice a year, with our community arts experience trustees meticulously scoring each project on impact and sustainability. To date, we have supported craft and visual arts projects, dance, drumming for wellbeing, and preservation of heritage and culture. If you share our passion, not just for maintaining the arts themselves, but contributing to the many benefits it can bring, please consider making a donation to Click Arts Foundation registered charity.
Hi, my name is Dr. Constance Leland, the host of Level Up Circle, where I elevate the world through education, one learner at a time. Join me on Fresh Takes, Thursdays at 9 a.m. PST, right here on E360 TV.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters After Hours. Today we're doing a tutorial episode, and I've been talking about public speaking and presentation skills. If you've just tuned in, if you want to go back to the beginning, you can think about things like the warm-up. I give you some exercises, vocal exercises, and we talk about making your speech interesting with pitch, pace, and pause. We're now moving on to the second part, which is the preparation for your speech. I am not yet talking about speech writing. That is going to happen in the third part. So if you want to just skip this segment, you could. You can just jump straight to the speech writing bit. But the preparation takes place in your venue. And this, to me, is one of the most important aspects, and it is one of the most underappreciated. So a lot of people go to their venue and they just speak. That's fine. Some people are more than able to do that. Usually with me, I end up having things like props, or I have people, I have dancers, I have various things that I need to coordinate on that stage. So one of the first things I will always do whenever I'm in a new environment is ask people, can I walk your stage? Can I understand where I'm standing? And that can make a massive difference. A very simple practical reason is for example, I wear glasses, and without them I cannot see a thing. So if for any reason I was doing something without my glasses only to put them on because I do use props and various other bits and pieces, I will need to know where my stage is and if I'm going to fall off it. Those things are quite important. So walk the stage. Ask your organisers, can you walk the stage? Part of that is also knowing what amplification you're going to have. Are you going to have shotgun mics at the front of the stage, so you're just simply standing and projecting to those mics? Are you going to have a handheld mic? In some places, especially those with community stages, they don't always have the equipment that a bigger venue might have. And so whilst you might want the shotgun mics, whilst you might want something where you don't have to hold it with one hand, the only thing that might be available will be a handheld microphone. Please ask for a stand if you do need one. They often will have at least a stand. So be aware whether it's handheld, or if you're having a lapel mic like this is known as the lapel, or a headset mic, the Britney Spears mic. I love those, it makes me feel really cool. So, and sometimes those mics can either be sat on a headset or they can be set behind an ear. They can be kind of different depending on the venue as well. Either way, familiarize yourself. Or sometimes, and this may happen even in a big, nice, very expensive venue, if the mics don't work or there are no mics, you're also going to have to know how much you're going to project. There is a reverse or sort of other flip side to that coin as well. I am usually quite big in my presentations, and sometimes if a venue is tiny, that's going to scare the front row. So being aware of where the audience is, where you're sat, might even mean I might come and sit on the edge of the stage and present, rather than actually try and do a great big thing on the stage if my talk allows for it. But the reason, as I say, you check your amplification is for you, but also to know whether, if you have got a lapel, because that means you can use both hands. If you have a handheld, you are suddenly down to one hand. And this may not be a problem for everybody, but if you're holding cue cards, or if, like me, you have props and you want to use two hands, that is a problem. So always check first, because if you can check, it means you can do something about it. So this is where I say, just go to the venue, check the equipment, check where you're performing. Also check where you can leave any props if you're using them. I will talk about props. There is a whole thing about props in a minute. But if you're using props, make sure they are accessible. So, for example, I have a table here at the moment with one prop on it, but I've been in places where I've had to set my props way before the event has started because I've had to put them in the actual lectern itself, underneath it. I've had to put props on a backstage table, but know that that table has to be walked on. You need to know the logistics of what you're going to do. The other thing, and I know it may seem a bit silly, depending on what those props are, you might need to check health and safety regulations. Not that I would necessarily say sword fighting in a speech is going to happen very often. But I was at a venue once where we were doing a sword fight. It was a performance venue. We had beautiful swords that we had to chop the ends off because health and safety regulations. And I still need to apologise to that drama teacher for that because, I had no idea that that was going to happen before we got there. So check your venue, check your equipment. Once you're there, once you've walked the stage, this is your choice. It's something I do. You won't hear this in our show because we have the intro music anyway. But before I deliver any of my sessions, I have music. I play music. I even play music on webinars. So I've got my CD player. It's playing usually something relevant like Under Pressure or something suitable for stress busting and well-being. And I just have it playing whilst I'm setting up. This gives you two advantages. The first advantage is it doesn't feel so awkward. So when people come in, even to Zoom, it feels a bit like, oh, hello, I don't know what I'm doing here. Am I in the right place? That kind of thing. If you've got opening slides on, great, not a problem. If you've got opening slides up, also great, because at least people know they're in the right place. So it stops people feeling so awkward. But the second thing it does is it makes people kind of understand that they're walking into your space, which in turn makes you feel that this is your space. So when I'm playing my music, I own this space. This is mine, at least for the next 10 minutes, 2 hours, whatever time it's going to be. So you don't have to, and there may not always be the opportunity to, but I have a little speaker I bring with me to places, or alternatively I play the radio on the laptop. So playing music to start with, to me, sets the scene quite nicely. Another thing which I learned as a teacher, not as a public speaker, but as a teacher, depending on whether it's appropriate or not, is having something on the screen that isn't just your agenda or your name. This may not be possible, in that it might be that the only thing they give you is your name, and that's that, you're stuck with it. But you can, if you've got the choice, put on something like a puzzle or a statement or a quote, something that gets people thinking and conversing about what you're going to say. Because that way you get people engaged from the start. So again, it's another way to own your venue. Now, that's before the whole speech even starts. What do you do when the actual speech starts? Well, the thing is, you're going to be judged the second you stand up. The second people see you, you are going to be judged. What's quite interesting comes from NLP. You are also going to be judged based on the last person. So, I've been in various speaking situations, some of which have been incredible, and people have gone on, they've been amazing, and they're going off to rapturous applause. And if that happens, go and stand exactly where they were. And you get that reflected glory, that expectation you're going to be just as good as they are. Go and stand exactly where they were. I've also been in other situations, usually at university open days or those sort of days, where the poor students have had to sit through about 5 or 6 different speeches already, all of varying degrees of ability and interest. And then I come on doing something a little bit more practical, a little bit more lively. However, I can see it. The students, they're just, they're like this by this point. So what do? Well, the last thing you do is, after they've just seen the last speaker go through slide 210 out of 210, and then they move away and everyone's just kind of like this. The last thing I'm going to do is go and stand where they were. Instead, stand and start your speech somewhere completely opposite. And this is another place where music can come in handy. If you can play music, suddenly it wakes everybody up. But I have been known to start speeches from the back of the room when things like that happen. And I'm mic'd up usually by that point, so they know to amplify me, or I just speak really loudly. And I come on from the back and I bring the audience attention with me as I walk through onto the stage. I do not stand where the person has just crashed and burned. So please think about that. It's a little NLP trick. And you can use it in dating as well. If you ever go clubbing, I'm way too old for that, but I used to. And you see it. You've got someone dancing, and then someone comes along, and they ignore them, completely ignore them. And then another one tries from the same place. If you do something like that, you're going to get the same response. Do something different. It's exactly the same with public speaking. So, check your venue, check your equipment, own the stage, know the stage, and when it comes to starting your presentation with a punch, use things like NLP, use things like reading the room to know where you're going to have the most impact. We shall be back with how to structure a speech just after this.
Our passion for coffee goes way beyond the cup. We believe in a fair production chain in which each coffee farmer plays an essential role. We are proud to support our communities and promote environmental sustainability. Bedford Coffee Roasters guarantees an exceptional experience for producers and consumers. Join us on our journey to extraordinary coffee, where quality, sustainability and fairness come together to create an experience unlike any other. Ground with passion, served with pride, Bedford Coffee Roasters, coffee worth drinking.
Welcome back to part 3 of this very special Mental Health Matters After Hours. It is a tutorial special, and in these episodes I give a little bit of a practical masterclass on a mental health topic. Now, whilst you might say public speaking is not necessarily a mental health topic, I would actually say that it's one of the things that causes people the most anxiety. Or at least people I've spoken to, they are absolutely brilliant people, they will not speak in public. And so I think it's quite useful to deliver something on this, because the way we can deal with that anxiety is actually not psychological. It is not about saying to people, oh, visualize yourself doing this speech and visualize the audience naked. No one wants to do that. But what it is knowing what the components are to make up that speech, to make up that presentation, and practice. Public speaking is a performance skill. Unless you practice it, it's not going to work. So you can have all the theory that you want. You can make as many notes as you like from this. But unless you go out there and practice it, it's not going to happen. Okay, so let's talk about the speech itself. And with that, I'm also going to add on delivery. Just forgot one, so I want to put that in. Gestures. I'm laughing because I know what I'm thinking about where it goes horribly wrong. Right, let's talk about the speech. Structure. The structure of your speech is really important, and that depends on the time that you have. However, I would generally use 3 key messages maximum. And that tends to be for any speech that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes to 20 minutes. This talk is also broken into 3 key segments. So 3 key messages is about what the brain can comprehend and cope with. It means if they don't remember the last bit, they'll remember something from the middle. If they don't remember that, they might remember something from the start. Something will sink in. One of the dangers of speeches is you want to put so much into it that you just throw everything in and it doesn't make any sense. What I like to do, and this is if you're going to have 3 points, if you're going to have 5 points, even if you're going to have 10 points, as long as your key messages are numbered, you should get away with even a 10-point speech, but you must number them. That's something I learned with interview technique, in fact, because you get that whole, that question, tell me about yourself, or, tell me about your greatest success. And I'm a bit of a rambler. But one thing I learned from law school was to actually say, yeah, there's 3 things I really want to highlight about myself. And then just go number 1, number 2, number 3. There's 3 things, and those are the 3 things. Because that way you've said it, and it stops you from saying too much. So even if you do have 10 points that you want to put in, as long as you number them, that's okay. So when it comes to your structure, just be aware of your content. And when it comes to your content, what I want you to think about is, what do you want your audience to feel at the end of your speech? So for me, I would like you, anyone watching this, to go away and think, okay, I feel comfortable in delivering a presentation. I may not use everything that she said, but I at least have got a few tips and tricks that I can use now to enhance what I can do. So think about what you want your audience to feel at the end. So structure and content is part of the same thing. And then once you know what your audience, you want them to feel at the end, then your structure can lead into that particular ending. Now, these little things come within your speech. The rule of 3. The rule of 3 is lovely. This is where you use 3 descriptors. So something along the lines of marketing promotion was exciting, engaging, and impactful. That's the rule of 3, using 3 adjectives. It's really difficult to explain why 2 doesn't work, but it doesn't. Even if you say that marketing presentation was exciting and engaging, it just feels a bit unfinished. Exciting, engaging, impactful just brings it to an end. It's rhythmic. Our brains like hearing that. We know it's ended. So try and use the rule of 3. You don't necessarily need to use alliteration, so you don't need to start with the same letter of each of the words that you use. You can, but try and put in the rule of 3 if you are trying to emphasize something. Don't use it all the time, and don't use it after every single point you're making, because then it will sound contrived. Do you tell a personal story or not? Sometimes you do. Sometimes, if that is what the speech is about, even TEDx is about personal stories. And you need to put your personal story across in a way that's going to resonate with a massive audience. And there is nothing wrong with sharing personal stories. On this mental health show, we have a lot of high-level mental health practitioners. And a lot of them do worry about sharing where they've come from. But we've spoken with the lead for suicide prevention in NHFT, Lisa Pearson, and she is very open with her own mental health struggles. And the fact that she knows that she's been there, she understands what it feels like, and she has been able to manage it and deal with it, that makes a huge difference for everybody who's listening to her. And that's the same thing with you. If you've got a personal story that is going to be impactful, that is going to affect your speech, use it. Use it. Time it. We've also been in other situations where I know I've had somebody who's gone on, they haven't prepared their speech, and they don't know where to come to an end either. And you're looking at the clock thinking, I've got to fit 5 more people on. How is this going to work? So please, just out of courtesy to the organisers, time it. This show is timed. My producer times this. So we know how this works. Timing is really important. Do you use statistics? Well, statistics are really, really good. You can lie with them. So please be careful with what you use. And when it comes to statistics, do understand what you are saying with it. So I saw an absolutely brilliant speech, and excuse my language, I will prefix it first. And it was something like, someone said 1 in 5 boys think that Andrew Tate is a really important influencer. What they didn't say is 4 out of 5 boys think Andrew Tate is a prick. That Absolutely. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. So use your statistics well, making the point you need to make. And in terms of naughty words and things like that, the brain does listen to them. So yes, if you want to use them for shock factor, but know why you're using them. Metaphor. Metaphors are lovely because they can really help people understand what you're talking about. And when it comes to metaphors, try and use something that is recognizable to everybody. So nothing too obscure. I can't think of anything offhand, but I have been in places where people have given this metaphor and I sort of sat there going, I don't know what you mean. I can't relate to that. So be careful with metaphor. And same thing with quotes. Quotes, really, really lovely to use. A, make sure you cite who said them, and B, make sure you've cited them correctly. So I'll give an example of things like, play it again, Sam, is not the right quote. It is play it, Sam, play it again. It's things like that which have been misquoted so often that you don't even realise that you are misquoting a misquote. One recent example, I'm trying to work on a documentary at the moment on heritage. And I was watching a documentary about my heritage, or a drama about my heritage. And it started with a lovely quote which said something like, a person who does not know their history is like a tree without a root. I thought, oh my God, that's so lyrical. And if I can quote it as from being from that drama, that's really lovely and really nice. But I thought I'd better check. I'm going to check where this came from. Michael Crichton, Jurassic Park guy. Yeah, not using that quote. So be mindful where those quotes come from. Right, so that's your structure, that's your content, that's your rule of three. If you know what your key messages are, focus on your speech within those key messages. Everything leads up to the last message. So now let's get to the last few little bits when it comes to how you deliver. Do you use props? Maybe. Is the answer. If they are there to get your attention, and I love this is a fabulous prop. I use this, I've got a rubber chicken, I burst balloons, and I do them within my talks because it grabs attention at the time I need it to. Very much like singing or speaking in general. If you've spoken for a long time, as today, as you'll be feeling this, is you'll really attune to my voice, it'll get quite hypnotic, and then you'll tune out. So something like that, something goes, oh, what was that? That was really different. That's why singers put in speaking bits, and then there's a bridge in songs. It's just to keep the interest, otherwise we zone out. So props, yes, as long as they A, fit what you're doing and convey your message, and B, you can use them without fumbling over them. So if you are trying to do things where you actually need 3 hands or 2 hands and a table and you don't have the table, don't do it. Don't do it. Try and adapt and do something completely different. So I personally think props are great, but work with them first. Don't think, oh, I saw somebody else do this prop and use this prop and it was brilliant. I'm going to do it. And then it's the first time you've practiced with it and it's not going to work. So use them, but use them with care. Do you use slides? I don't. I never like slides because I think it's quite awful when I just see people read off their slide. And it's worse when you see slide 1 out of 250 and all they're going to do is read off that slide, because you may as well have just been sent the presentation. You go read it in your own time. Same thing. So slides are great. This is effectively a slide. And I use a flip chart usually for my training sessions because I do exercises with people and then we work together with them. So I tend to use a flip chart. But slides are great as long as your whole talk isn't on them. If you're using images, brilliant. And that can really take the place of props. That can really illustrate something even more than a prop is able to, or even more than a metaphor can. So imagery on slides is absolutely fantastic. And I would be thinking of 1 slide per 5 minutes or so. That doesn't mean put all of your information on there. It just means don't bombard people with slide number 1, slide number 2, slide number 3. There are times where you will 100% need slides if you're using statistics and you're showing statistics and you're showing quotes and things like that, absolutely. But then if you're showing quotes, for example, if you can get a vox pop, somebody saying it, change your voice as well. It's lovely. So yes, up to you, depending on your content. Gestures. You will see I use a lot of gestures when I speak. That's perfectly natural. I had somebody raise a question in my last session where they said, I want to hold a pen when I'm talking. It just makes me feel comfortable. That's fine. You can hold a pen as much as you like. However, beware of two specific things. One is don't start using it like a dagger, because people don't like that. Two, if you're doing this too much, that happens. And it hits someone in the face, an interviewer sometimes. So please be careful if you are going to be holding something or to stop yourself gesticulating. Now, gestures are great, but gestures have to be related and as impactful as your speech is. So what I mean by that is resist the amateur dramatics. Resist telling people to do things like that, because that's really annoying. It's really annoying in amateur dramatics as well. Try and use your gestures as you need them. So if you are using them to gesticulate on the board, if you're using them to use the laser pointer, if you're using them to point in different directions, great. But every single gesture has to be meaningful. So as you can see, this is how I use it to emphasize my words. Again, that's probably because I'm very used to doing it. And so a lot of this behavior has become quite natural. But don't use gestures for the sake of using them. If you're a particularly nervous person, I would even hold on to things like your flip chart or your whiteboard or your lectern or a chair. And another thing that you can do that people don't talk about is you can sit down. So for example, as I said, I might sit on the side of a stage, I might sit on a table, I might sit on a chair and talk to people. And that again changes the energy. I find my energy is better when I'm standing up. However, when I've taught certain groups who are quite nervous, that's too much for them. So I've sat down and spoken to them more person to person. That can be just as effective. You can even do it to bring down a quiet part in your story and draw people in. So again, use gestures, use movements to suit you. And as we get to the very last thing, the first impression, that really counts. And that first impression happens from the minute you walk on stage, from the minute you are called up. So it does mean, yes, if you fall over, you fall over. But those things happen, and it does happen. So, you know, you can just do that comedy. I'm all right, we've been there, we've done that. There's no point hiding from it. If something untoward happens, you just kind of got to go with it. But that first impression does happen from the minute you walk on. So if you walk on stage, not very sure of yourself, you know, sort of shuffling around a bit, people are already kind of going, oh. And you've got to remember, psychologically, people really want to like you. And they really want to like you because they're sat there having to listen to you. So they kind of really want to be entertained. So they are on your side. They are not waiting for you to fail. So really think about that confident walk as you walk on. What I tend to do when I walk on stage is, and this is why I walk the stage beforehand, so I know in case there's steps there and I need to hitch my skirt up or whatever. But it's once you've walked on stage, make sure the audience knows that you are in charge and that they're in for a really good time. Now, that also comes to swaying. A discovery I found recently was in somatic well-being work. There's a movement where you just sway backwards and forwards. And I found this one of the most relaxing things I've ever done. And it's something that I add, hitting my microphone, something I add to my routine, my well-being routine. If I'm just feeling a bit stressed, I will just sway. And the reason I think I found it so enlightening and relieving is because I have trained myself not to sway. One of the things that happens on stage is we might do this, we might do this, or we might do this, which makes you look like you want the toilet. It's uncomfortable. It makes people feel seasick. And this is my favorite. And I bring it up now because I've seen it happen more than once. I used to think it was just this one person's issue. He was great, fabulous singer, and this was a young lad I directed, but he used to stand there like this, as if he's pleasuring the person behind him. And it's just, no, stop doing that. And it's because he's perfectly in character here, except for this hand. That's where the nervous energy is coming out, is in this hand. And I've seen this a couple of times in different people, so I know it's not just unique to that young man. So watch all the little bits. If you stop the swaying, something else might happen, like a nervous tick in something different. And what you will see if you watch any of these shows really, really carefully is when I can't remember what I'm saying, I'll shut my eyes. And it was only one of my public speaking students who told me that. They watched a video that I'd recorded and they said, oh yeah, you lost where you were at that point. You shut your eyes. Yes, that is the thing that I do. But that's so subtle now because I've worked on all the other things. But yeah, comes into that first impression. It's really important. And as you walk up onto that stage, what I tend to do is I remember and rehearse that first line. So I know that once I start, I can carry on. In today's talk, that first line was George Jessel and the human brain. That was the one line I had to remember. And once you're in, you carry on going. So that hopefully gives you a whole, in a nutshell, way to work on your public speaking and your presentations. The very last thing I will say to you is practice. You can have taken as many notes as you want, but unless you actually go out there and do a couple of speeches, not necessarily in front of everybody, but just in front of someone to rehearse it. And that's the final tip. When you've written everything down, speak it out loud, because it will not sound the same when you speak it out loud as when you think it when you're reading it. Because when you're reading it, your brain skips certain bits. So that's why you have proofreaders. Speak it out loud. Right, just a very quick recap and summary. Warm up your jaw, your mouth, articulate. Think about how you use your tool, your voice, and how you look after it. Check your venue, check your equipment, check the other speakers, read the room. So don't just explore the room, read the room. And then when it comes to your speech, when it's turned into your speech, structure, content. These are ways in which you can make your speech really effective, and then you can enhance it with props, gestures, slides, and so on. And that first impression really, really matters. And practice. And then hopefully, psychological reasons aside, so whether you've done your hypnosis or whether you've done any of those things aside, if you can practice all of those things, chances are your brain will continue working. And in fact, you will embrace the fact you are speaking in public. On that, last lines, very last thing. On that, I was about to say goodnight. Your last line needn't be anything more than simply thank you and good night.